Lions fan. This is your guy. I'm not a Lions fan, but the last video cut off, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to pick up from where we left off before. And I was basically saying we, as in I am a Lions fan. I have been. Let me say this: I have been in Detroit all my life, and that's all of 43 years. But I've never been a Lions fan. I never been a Lions fan. I always rooted for the team that was going from the bottom to go to the top. And it didn't matter what franchise that it was. If I saw it developing in that direction, I went to it. So my mainstay has been the 49ers from I would say from the era of Bill Walsh to George Seifert. Anything past that point, I really wasn't involved with the 49ers. But so I saw how they was developing when Bill Walsh got there. It was really nothing there. And then or you could take for another example, Dallas Cowboys with Jimmy Johnson, how they had nothing there. He came from, he basically came from Miami, or the previous regime was, I think, Tom Landry, and he basically built something from nothing to something. So I follow teams like that versus like a one hit wonder. I like to see a development from year to year or development process. So the Lions right now, up under Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, they are developing that process for the last past. This is going on the third year to being together, and so I can see what they've been doing. And right now I'm talking about a couple players in particular. I'm talking about Trey Flowers and how he is finally getting his complimentary player in Danny Shelton. And Danny Shelton is going to maximize what's inside um, Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers is going to maximize what's inside Danny Shelton. So that's why I think it's a perfect fit. So, and that's going to trickle down to the rest of the defensive line. Once you get a player to establish himself, and I believe Trey Flower was that guy that established himself last year. Kenny Galladay was the guy who established himself. Jelani Tavai established himself last year. Frank Ragnar established himself. Tracy Walker established himself. Now, a person may say like Tracy Walker didn't get that many reps, so he didn't. Or they could say Jelani Tavai, he didn't because he didn't get that many reps. But if you look at the moment that every time he was on the field, I'm looking for that self same effort, 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 technique. I'm looking for that self same effort. I guess I could say ability, but effort and technique is something they check off the boxes. They know how to position themselves to make plays. And so that's why I look at those as anchors. With that being said, I'm going to actually I start off with this talking about Matthew Stafford, and like I got two sets of numbers here about Matthew Stafford. Now there, and I have made a few comments on a few subscribers uh, uh, channels about when they was talking about how if the subject was, I think Sports Illustrated was talking about who is they Mount Rushmore. I don't know if they was specifically talking about the Detroit Lions, and of course they said like, well, they have Barry Sanders, they have Calvin Johnson, and they want to lean towards Matthew Stafford. And I made a comment of saying it depends on which Stafford you're talking about, because there was two forms or two versions of Stafford. There's the version before Calvin Johnson retired, and then there's the Stafford after Calvin Johnson retired. So I want to talk about those sets of numbers real quick. Now I'm not trying to harp on Matthew Stafford. I think, well, I'll get to that, but let's talk about these numbers real quick. Before Calvin Johnson retired, you have Matthew Stafford. We're gonna go with year, touchdown, interception, and completion percentage. 2009, 13 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 53-32. Then you can go with, let's start, if we were to get, that's just when he first came into the league. And let's say the last year with Calvin Johnson. The last year with Calvin Johnson was 2016. He had 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a 65 completion percentage. As you can see, from his rookie year to last year with Calvin, his numbers start to grow. That means he was coming into his own. Now, the year after Calvin left was 2017. He had 29 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 65 uh, a 65 completion percentage. Now, I bring up those numbers for this reason. It's not to basically to put Matthew Stafford down or nothing like that. I think Matthew Stafford is great right now. But when he first came in the first few years, let's say the first one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, I would say the first 4 years of his career, he was pretty much terrible. First 4 years, he was terrible to me. In my opinion, he wasn't really that. He wasn't seasoned. In other words, he wasn't in control of himself. He was still trying to figure out the game was probably moving a little bit fast, and he had some numbers, and so the fans was like pretty much whatever what. So, but at the same time, he had a split of the fan votes about if he's considered good or he's not because his numbers wasn't really consistent, or he would make crucial he would make decisions. They say he would make the wrong decision at crucial times, and or he, it would just the game was kind of like to me wasn't he was really wasn't mature of himself. But at a certain point, after Calvin Johnson left, the game I think itself started to slow down between the coaching that he received. Okay, when he came in the league, I think he came in under Jim Schwartz. But from Jim Schwartz, it went to Cardwell. And I think by the time Cardwell got a hold of him, I think that the game was starting to slow down. And I think I would say Cardwell had a say in that, where he was showing him how to maximize himself. He was pointing out certain things that I think Jim Schwartz couldn't point out. By Cardwell being an offensive coordinator, he could see certain things that Jim Schwartz, by him being a defensive coordinator, he couldn't see. So that's why I think Cardwell was able to slow down the game for him. Now, by the time that Bevel got to him, or up under Patricia, you could see a totally different, even though it's only 1 year up under Bevel, you could see a totally different Stafford. Now, of course, he had off-field events with dealing with his wife and so forth. That is a growth part where it helped him slow down and mature. Him having his children, everything, all this plays a part. That's why I said Matthew Stafford is like the icing on the cake, and that's why I don't consider him an anchor because he's at the end of his career. He pretty much reached his ceiling. All he have to do is just be Matthew Stafford now. And the Matthew Stafford that I'm speaking about is not the one before Calvin Johnson. It's the one after Calvin Johnson, particularly the one we have been seeing, or one we have seen the last past 2 years. The game is slowing down, or last past 3 years, the game has slowed down and is slowing down. And he's matured. So I think, going back to my point of why I said Quinn and Patricia is going to lead the Lions to a Super Bowl, is because all the pieces, all the things, all the positions, everything is in line now, in place. So somebody would say, well, the the defensive line is not in line. The offensive line is not really, it's not solidified. If you look at it, it is. Look what Bevel was able to do with a depleted offensive line. It was semi productive, but he was able to tinker with what he had. So if you give him something with that, like I said, some players that checks off all the boxes, we're going to pretty much assume that he can, make it fit. So, and once again, they said like, well, they drafted two offensive guards this year, and they brought in two, or they brought in one from last year, da, 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 um, undrafted free agent last year, and they also brought in a free agent in Joshua Garnett. But what he's going to do, even if you got the Kenny Wiggins and you got Obuchi and whatever, or even you go with Crosby, he's going to, whichever one does what he needs him to do, who checks off all of the boxes, they have the position. So this is why when the fan is saying like we need this name, we need that name, that's not how Bevel works. That's not how Patricia works. Whoever can do the job, whoever can hit the ground running has the spot. So I heard when they had a debate, or a brief debate on one of the channels, and they was talking about the latest rookie that they brought in. I believe his name is Stanley. I think that's his name. But anyway, and it was like what kind of role that he would have. And some was saying he's going to have a limited role because he's like lower on the depth chart. And then some was saying like, well, he's going to actually surpass those who are on the depth chart because, they really not they he what the rookie can bring in is that is it Huntley, not Stanley, Huntley. What Huntley could bring in can actually leapfrog over what was already established here. You're talking about the guys like Jamal Agnew, Ty Johnson, Kerryon Johnson, and yeah, pretty much that. And he can get his snaps based upon how he's able to check off all the boxes. Now I'm going to make this point and I'm going to close it. With everything that they brought in this year, from Okuda to Trufant to Jamie Collins to Danny Shelton to my guy Harmon, and what they brought in here was like, okay, what they establishing with the players that they brought in here, even from the two guards and even from Cephas, the receiver, and so forth. We're not going to wait for the previous guys who had the position to maximize themselves here. They're going to go ahead and move to the next guy, as we would say as fans. The next, I mean, as organizations may say, the next man up. So what they did was draft a guy. So select, for example, if you have Kerryon Johnson, who's your starting running back, but he's considered unreliable because he can't stay on the field. Therefore, they brought in a guy who checks off all the boxes as a running back. But if Kerryon Johnson's job to lose, but if he's unreliable, they have their replacement. So what they're saying is, if you're not ready, we're going to move on without you. And I have never seen the Lions organization do that. Now, Matthew Stafford is the icing on the cake. Bob Quinn is the architect. Basically, he's putting all the pieces together from the upper management. Now, he maybe have talked to Mrs. Ford about, hey, those who up in the manager, they're not doing their job, whatever, they got to go. So she cleaned house with that. So that it trickled down. So if they don't do their job, if those who are above Bob Quinn don't do their job, Bob Quinn can't do his job. And Matt Patricia can't do his job because Bob Quinn can't do his job. So, and the players can't do their job because the coach can't put them in position based upon what he has to work with. So, a lot of fans may want the coach to bring a genie out of a bottle type deal, but when you have like players that don't check off all of the boxes, or so like if you got 5 boxes and they only checking off 2 or 3, possibly 2, if you're getting 3, you're stretching it. I don't think you can win with that. So what Patricia done, or you could say Bill Parcells, or even Bill Walsh or Jimmy Johnson, what they did, they found guys who check off the boxes what their vision is. See, what the fan may look at is statistics, but those statistics don't check off all the boxes. You may not need a guy who's a straight raw edge rusher, but you may need a guy who can actually have a technique with leverage that can actually power a person to their right, which is still like that as in Danny Shelton. He could power a guy, a lineman towards his left. Let's say, for example, he can push him towards his left. That can free up Trey Flowers to be Trey Flowers. And remember, Trey Flowers was 6 sacks last year. And what I mean by that, he was coming off of no workout off season and off of injury, surgery, and so forth. And he came in pretty much trying to establish himself as a Lion versus as complementary players with New England. So when he was playing here, he played with nobody who can basically maximize who he is or complement him. In other words, hand washing of the hand or washing each other's back, so to speak. So he came in with the guy next to him, somewhat Snacks or Ashawn Robinson, but those guys wasn't like I won't say this. They were say Snacks is good when he's motivated. Ashawn Robinson was good, but he was like, in my opinion, below average. He's a player. Don't get me wrong. He made the league, so he's a player, but he's not. He doesn't check off all the boxes like a guy like Snacks could. But Snacks has to be motivated to check off all the boxes. So they can't really play with Snacks because he's not reliable. You can't really play with Ashawn Robinson because he's not reliable. So Trey Flowers had nothing to go with that would help him. So he did it solely on his own. All right, but with that being said, I'm going to close out with that. But okay, about the Tracy Walker thing, I want to close with this. Tracy Walker, while he's an anchor, look what you surrounded Tracy Walker with. And I'm saying, like, okay, from the two new cornerbacks, because you're going to get it, regardless if it's a Warrior or if it's Trufant or it's Okuda, whoever, you're going to get two new corners, right? And you basically going to get two new safeties. I don't know if the rookie Will Harris is going to take that starting spot over Harmon, but I'm going to put my money on Harmon that he has that starting because I believe he would check off all the boxes what Patricia wants. Once again, what I'm saying is in this video is that how they are from Quinn to Patricia, and even when Quinn bringing in the staff for Patricia, whatever, and each staff member that he brought in is going to maximize what's inside Patricia. And looks like if Patricia is this mastermind, Patricia can't master anything unless everything is in place. It's just like any corporation. You have a foundation where you build it off, where you got the players or you get the talent that gets their hands dirty, and they establish your foundation. But within that foundation, you may, as you're building that foundation, you may replace this or replace that. And I think that's where you had the Christian Jones, you had the I said Christian Jones, the Devin Kennards, and so forth. You have those type of players that Patricia they brought in to help establish the foundation, but they don't mean that they're mainstays. The mainstays are your anchors, and you build off your anchor, but you need to establish something. So that's what Patricia did for two years. He was establishing the foundation. He had to see who he had to work with, who was the players that checks off all the boxes, and particularly, especially when your players that you see that can check off all the boxes are not available. But once they become available, you go get them. This is why you go get the Danny Shelton. This is why you go get the Harmons. This is why you get the Trey Flowers. This is why you go and get the Jamie Collins because they were available. And the guys that you had, those three, let's say those four players alone is better than what we had. They are the very best that we had. They are the very best at their position in comparison to what we had the previous year before they got here. With that being said, Lions fans, we're going to close this video on out.